1995 is an important year. In 1995, many video games were released, the internet became public, and Windows 95 was released. Let us go through those starting January. Video games started releasing as early as the first mid-battle arena Toshiden on the PlayStation 1. It was one of the first full 3D fighting games released, which is something. We got Buzz to move on this NAS 12 days later, and it was not until February 15th where Star Wars Dark Forces came out on DOS. It is the first in a series of Star Wars-based first-person shooters. Literally the next day, Ristar came out on the Sega Genesis, made by the same team responsible for the Sonic games. It was received favorably, but it did not get enough exposure initially. That being said, it was re-released multiple times digitally and on Sega-themed compilations, so that is something to know of, even if it never got any sequels. The character did get some cameos, so not all as for vain. Also, Run Mission came out 8 days later. Phantasy Star the 4th, The End of the Millennium was released in the US in February, but for some reason, the actual day is unknown. Anyway, it is the 4th and also the last game in the original Phantasy Star series. It kept a lot of the gameplay elements from the last game. However, it originally got mixed reception when released. Later, the reception has retrospectively gotten more positive. It got released on the Wii Virtual Console in 2008, and it is now on Nintendo Switch Online. Many Sega emulated collections also include it, so yay for that game. We move on to Mario Day, March 10th, where Panzer Dragoon came out. Then, the next day, Chrono Trigger was released, and that game is still highly held to this day. It was a commercial success, with many people appreciating the multiple endings to the game, side quests focusing on character development, the battle system, and its graphics. It was the second best-selling game in Japan in 1995, and by March 2003, it shipped 2.65 million copies worldwide. It was ported for the PlayStation in 1999 in Japan, then added to Final Fantasy Chronicles in the US in 2001. It was enhanced for the Nintendo DS in 2008 and 2009, and it has been ported to iMode, the Virtual Console, PlayStation Network, iOS, Android, and Windows. However, it only got one sequel, Chrono Cross, and that was it. Oh yeah, on Pi Day, Mario's Picross came out. It got some sequels only released in Japan because it failed outside of that country. It did get positive reception with its positives being the length and addictiveness, and its grid sizes and lack of typical Mario elements as negative. As a result, it is a cult classic. It would not be until 2007 where Picross DS came out, the first English Picross game since this one. It is available on the 3DS Virtual Console, so not all was for loss. 3 days later, Descent came out, and it had texture map polygons, polygonal enemies, and 6 degrees of freedom. Moving on to consoles, we got the Game Boy Play It Loud series, released on March 20th. It is literally just the Game Boy in different colors. Those colors are red, green, black, yellow, white, blue, and clear. Blue and white were never released in the US. The next day, we got Kirby's Dream Land 2, another Kirby game. It's a sequel to Kirby's Dream Land 1. It continues from Kirby's Dream Land and Kirby's Adventure, adding 3 animal friends to aid Kirby in battle. It can be played on the Super Game Boy for a custom color scheme, a special game border, and a few new sound effects. It was re-released on the 3DS Virtual Console, and it is included in Kirby's Dream Collection. Another 3 days later, the 7th Mega Man game came out. It only had a short period of development time, and it got average reception. Most people considered it a rehash, or they considered it to be inferior to Mega Man X, which came out more than a year ago. That being said, it is a good game, but most people seem to have liked Mega Man X4. Fast forward to April 15th, the third Mortal Kombat game came out, and it is a classic. It has all the blood and gore that the series has, and it has new fatalities. It also introduced combos. It got good reception, but for some reason, some characters are missing from the original game, including Scorpion, the mascot of the series. Luckily, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 and Mortal Kombat Trilogy added the missing characters and added some new features. So, on April 23rd, the Satellaview add-on came out in Japan only, and it used satellite broadcasts from ST.Giga. You needed a BS tuner from ST.Giga, and you had to pay subscription fees to ST.Giga and Nintendo to fully use it. The system was Nintendo's effort to save ST.Giga from financial struggle, but by 1998, their relationship started to collapse because ST.Giga refused to have a debt management plan, and they failed to secure a broadcasting license. The system lost support in 1999, and it was discontinued in 2000. It did get some good reception. ST.Giga had 100,000 subscribers by March 1997, and it has a cult following. Many people are trying to recover and host its services, so it was not a big loss. Going to April 27th, we have Jumping Flash for the PS1, and then Super Bomberman 3 the next day. It was not released in the US because Hudson Soft USA got closed. It did get good reception, so that is that. Also, the internet stopped being funded by the US government on April 30th, so that's when the internet really came out. Full Throttle came out on the same day. White Crusader came out almost a month later on May 25th. And then King Arthur and the Knights of Justice came out sometime in May because no one knows when it actually came out. I forgot to mention, Sega released the Saturn on May 11th. It was a commercial failure in the USA. It was released just out of the blue. Retailers actually refused to sell the console, and it got outsold by the PlayStation and Nintendo 64. Sega's bad management is the reason why this console failed to get a following. It is not a bad console. It is the commercial failure and Sega's reputation that hurt this console. June 5th, 2 games came out, Earthbound and Street Fighter Alpha. Earthbound was not successful in the US at all. First of all, its marketing campaign was satirical, where it claimed that this game stinks, which is probably not how you sell a video game. Next, it got little market interest overall. It also never got released in Europe. Later, it did get a following, but that was years later. This is probably the reason why Mother 3 is still only in Japan. Anyway, it was re-released on the Wii U's Virtual Console worldwide, and it is on the SNES Classic, so it is an example of a failure to success. Street Fighter Alpha expands on Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and it was very successful. It got positive reception, and it was the most popular arcade game in August 1995 in America. Okay, on June 7th, Flight Unlimited was released for DOS, and then jumping to July 21st, Castlevania Dracula X was released. It is a revision of Castlevania Brando of Blood. It was re-released on the Wii U Virtual Console, and also on the new Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console. It was put into Castlevania Advanced Collection in 2021, and it came with Castlevania Circle of the Moon, Castlevania Harmony of Dissonance, and Castlevania, Aria of Sorrow on the Game Boy Advance. That being said, Dracula X only got average reception. Most people complained that it was a watered-down version of Rondo of Blood. It was in no way Castlevania 5. On the day Dracula X was released, the Virtual Boy came out. Yeah, it was a failure. In fact, it was released unfinished to the market. Aside from that, it was overpriced, had a red monochrome display, had unimpressive 3D, was barely portable, and it had potential health concerns. The 3DS did a better job years later. It has sold less than 1 million units, which makes this a major loss. Now, we got MECHWARRIOR 2 on July 24th, The King of Fighters 95 the next day, and Phantasmagoria on the last day of July. In August, Comic Zone was released on the 2nd, Tekken 2 came out the next day, and on August 15th, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island was released. On the day before that, the Nintendo Entertainment System was finally discontinued, at least in the US. Back to Yoshi's Island, it sold 4 million copies, and it was acclaimed. It renowned Yoshi as a character, and it established the Yoshi series as a whole, due to its art style and Yoshi's characteristics. Lots of people liked the art, sound and level design. This was a redeeming factor for Nintendo. After the failure, it was the Virtual Boy. On that same day, Windows 95 was released into manufacturing, and then on the 24th, it was officially released to a success. It sold 1 million copies in 4 days, and by 1998, it had 57.4% of the market share, making it the most used operating system. Anyway, on the last day of August, 2 games came out, Command & Conquer and Heroes of Might and Magic, A Strategic Quest. Sometime in September, Wild Woody came out, but since nobody knows the exact date it came out, its release is still a mystery. September 9th, the PlayStation was released in the US. It came out 20 days later in Europe. The system caused Sony to rise in the video game industry. It sold more than 100 million units in less than a decade, and it used compact discs instead of cartridges. It also was not discontinued until 2006, making the system last 12 years total. Launching with the system was RAYMAN, which sold about 1 million copies in 2 years. It was the best-selling PlayStation game in Britain, and it received very positive reception. People liked its graphics, soundtrack, and atmosphere. It was later re-released for the Game Boy Advance, PlayStation Network, Seaware, and iOS and Android devices. It was also the first game in the series that shares the same name. On October 1st, Secret of Evermore was released, followed by Tactics Ogre, Let Us Play Together on the 6th, Hyper-Area on the 13th, Hexen, Beyond Heretic 2 days later, and Terranigma on the 20th. For the 25th of October, Funtech released the Super 8. Is this what Taiwanese people use? Anyway, it was only released in Taiwan, and of course, it failed because it was too expensive. Funtech lost $6 million, and they sold the remaining systems as scrap material to the US. On October 27th, Panel-Deton was released, where it was called Tetris Attack in the West. However, it has no relation to Tetris. It was positively received, and it got sequels using the name Puzzle League instead. People liked the graphics, gameplay, and multiplayer mode. Okay, on Halloween, Destruction Derby was released for the PS1, I Have No Mouth, and I Must Scream was released for DOS, and Star Wars. TIE Fighter was re-released as a collector's CD-ROM. Time Crisis also came out in October, but of course, nobody knows the exact date. November had a small release. Twisted Metal came out on the 5th, which started the currently longest PlayStation franchise made to date. Then, it took 15 days for another game to come out. That game was Donkey Kong Country 2. Diddy's Conquest has the sequel to Donkey Kong Country. It was acclaimed for its graphics, gameplay, and soundtrack. It was the second best-selling game of 1995, the sixth best-selling SNES game, and it was the best-selling game that never got repacked with the SNES. 2 days later, Toy Story was released. November 24th, we got 2 games. Battle Arena Toshinden 2 and Marathon 2 Durable. Then, on the last day of November, the Dig was released on PC. December was a bigger month because it is the month of Christmas. This time, there are 3 games with non-exact release dates on December. They are Soul Edge, Worms, and Time Crisis, 2 of them starting new series. On the 1st, Mega Man X3 was released. It would later be released on the PlayStation, Sega Saturn and Windows. It was also re-released as a part of the US version of Mega Man X Collection in 2006. Japanese mobile phones also got the game in 2010. It did receive positive reception, but people were not happy with the lack of improvements to the series. Then, on the 9th, Dragon Quest V, Realms of Revelation was released for the SNES in Japan only. It was not until 2011 that a remake of the game was released on the Nintendo DS. It also got a port for phones in Japan in June 2015. It sold 3 million copies in Japan, making it the best-selling game of 1995, at least in that region. This is despite the game costing over $100 at release. It also received positive reception, so that helps it. On that same day, Warcraft 2, Tides of Darkness was released as a sequel to the first Warcraft game. 3 games came out on December 15th. They were Suikoden, Brain Dead 13, and Tales of Phantasia. Tales of Phantasia was released in Japan only, but when it got ported to the Game Boy Advance, it got an international release. Anyway, this is the first game in the Tales series. The game also got a PlayStation Portable remake with voice acting, and it got more enhancements when it was re-released as part of Tales of Phantasia, Narikari Dungeon X in June 2010. It got positive reception, so yay. Anyway, Final Fight 3 came out on December 22nd, and it was the 3rd last game released in 1995. Finally, the last 2 games to come out this year were The Beast Within, The Gabriel Knight Mystery, and King's Field 2. Both came out on December 31st, New Year's Eve. Before we finish, there are some events related to gaming that are important to cover. In either January or February, Stars is released as shareware, meaning that it is free to use. Then, on April 6th, Bunko Inc. promotes the Vice President to the President and Chief Officer. He is Stanley Bodine, and he replaces David R. Puig, who becomes the Chairman and Chief Executive. Financial Controller Robert Iben is now the Chief Financial Officer, and the Vice President of the Merchant Information Systems Michael Hinnenkamp resigns for other career opportunities. On May 11th, the Trade Magazine Game Week is introduced. Also, from May 11th to May 13th, the Electronic Entertainment Expo, E3, is held in Los Angeles, California. This is the launch of said event. GamePAX launches on November 5th for video game packs. Finally, on November 24th, Nintendo reveals the Nintendo 64, originally named the Nintendo Nintendo Ultra 64. 13 games are shown, but only Kirby Ball 64 and Super Mario 64 were playable. Also, BioWare, Rock City, Interworld Productions, Remedy, and Talons of to merge as new companies this year. However, Cyberdreams becomes defunct this year. Nintendo also sued Samsung for promoting software piracy, and the case gets settled. Also, Nintendo of America got involved in a conflict with the deck this year. That is all I have for 1995. Remember to subscribe for more epic content, comment suggestions for future videos, and buy my merch. By now.